And today's guest has a passion for well-being in the workplace. With a 30-year track record in training and learning development, her interesting career even took her to living in St Petersburg in the 90s, the noughties, and some of the last decade too. And with a track record of promoting good health through learning and so on, and 10 years ago, she began a 4-year study to gain a master's degree in Western herbal medicine and naturopathy, if I'm actually saying that quite correctly. But many of us are far too focused on helping others when we sort of like, we feel a bit uneasy when we're actually asked by an airline to fit on our own masks before helping others. But that's just because of who we are. But yet, if we don't prioritize ourselves and our own well-being, then we're in no position to be able to help anyone else. So today, we focus on well-being and implementing well-being initiatives in organizations to improve employee happiness and productivity. And our guest has a proven track record of doing so and making many changes, starting with self-care. And we'll get an insight into some of those great practices, reflecting on our own journey. So today we bring to you Rachel Shackleton. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Richard. My goodness, I feel elevated on cloud 9 after that introduction. I've got quite something to live up to or to deliver for you. So I remember Richard saying to me when we had a brief chat, Rachel, be sure that when you speak, that you speak in a way that will help people remember your story and your learning from your story. So this is actually the route that I'm going to take. Is I'm going to give you a very brief period of my history, which has fed into the current day. So as Richard has already said, I specialize in learning and development solutions, and one of those is well-being in the workplace and actually leadership as well. But I also work with individuals from a health perspective through naturopathy, herbal medicine, and kinesiology. So I want to just start with a little bit of background about myself. So I started in the hospitality industry. It was something that I always wanted to do from about the age of 6. And I achieved that at the age of 17. I began my worldly tour, having the hospitality industry as the industry that paid me to travel the world. Extremely lucky. Eventually, I started to specialize in training and development, and that took me to St. Petersburg, which is where really this story is coming from. St. Petersburg in Russia, if you haven't been, is the most beautiful city in the world. We won't talk about current happenings, of course not. I joined a hotel there that needed, it'd been open about a year and a half, and it had no training systems whatsoever. And it was sort of a 5-star property, beautiful, beautiful building, and needed a specialist to come in and sort it out. So that's what I did. And at the end of sorting it out, 3 years later, I went into my own business in St. Petersburg, Russia. And it was 1996 that I started the business, which was very early in Russian terms, not long after the breakdown of the Cold War and all those aspects. So there wasn't much in Russia generally in terms of what we know as day-to-day living. So there was no advertising on the streets. There was no street lighting. Food was a bit hit and miss. If you saw it, you bought it. If you didn't buy it, it wasn't there next 10 minutes later. Anyway, I decided to start my own business there because nobody else was doing what I do. And it was a bit like being in an aeroplane. I'd recruited my team. I had about 10, 12 team members at the time that I'm now going to talk about. And the plane was going nicely. We were collecting very nice contracts and things were going along, and we really were taxiing, and we were beginning to speed up along the runway, ready for a full takeoff, when the financial crisis hit in 1998. This is probably the most difficult time of my life. I hadn't a clue what was going on. If you had 10,000 in the bank, 4 minutes later, you had 1,000. It was just, money was just disappearing into thin air. It was just evaporating. Of course, large organizations, foreign organizations, were sending all their foreign personnel home, putting in local people into those positions. But in addition to that, local people were being put on the street with no jobs, no possibility to feed their families. There's no social security there. You're on the street, you have to somehow make yourself, I don't know, food, find it somehow. And I was looking at this, and of course I was worried about the financial situation, and I didn't really understand, and everybody was negative around me. And I thought, this cannot be that I put my team members on the street. There has to be a way to make this work. So eventually, very quickly, because if you weren't quick, we would have all been on the street. I came with a solution. The solution was to put everybody on the same salary, absolutely flat salary. It didn't matter whether you were a trainer or you were the office assistant. It was irrelevant. Everybody went on to a flat salary. Anybody that didn't want to do this, they then had the choice to leave. I lost one person in that process, and actually she joined me later when things started to pick up again. The condition was that they come into the office 3 days a week, and during that time they must be productive. I didn't care what they did. They could clean out the bookcases, they could clean out office files, they could create new products. It didn't matter, but they had to be positive, constructive, and productive, and help me be positive and keep looking for business. We did things like have lunch together and laugh and over a bowl of pasta salad or something. And it was a difficult time, but it was a time that brought us all together. Of course, at some point that started to turn. It was about 18 months later. And actually when I was about ready to literally pack my suitcase and leave, I had enough in the bank to pay everybody's salaries for the last time. I got a call from British American Tobacco, who I'd been talking to for some time on a regular basis. And they said, Rachel, that contract that we signed before the financial crisis, we're ready to do it now. And I was almost numb. I was like, what? Here am I, I've made up my mind, I'm leaving. And now the universe delivers me with this wonderful contract. Well, actually, the rest from a business point of view is history. The ship turned and the airplane took off and everything was wonderful, except for one thing, and that was me. So in that time, I had put everybody before me. Sorry, I'm a bit emotional. I ended up eventually flying out of Russia in huge pain. My back had given up. The last job that I did before flying to London in a horizontal position was 80 assessments for Ford Motor Company, with a big meeting about each candidate and so on and so forth. And the general manager at the time, I mean, he was just such a horrible person. It was incredible. But I sat through that meeting. I did my job. I got on the plane and I flew out. And 4 hours later, I was in the consultant's office in London. I spent 3 months on my back, looking at the ceiling, thinking, why am I here? What is it I have to learn in this mess we've come through? What is it I have to learn? What is my body telling me? And actually, when you look at your body, and Alison will, I'm sure, second this, is that your back is your support system. When you have problems with your back, you need to look in the field of support. What is it that you're not supporting? Well, I was supporting everybody, but I wasn't supporting me. I was ignoring the signs from my own body telling me you've got to back off. You've got to back off. And I kept overriding it until such time as the body said, you can't anymore. And it literally floored me, put me to the floor. And those 3 months gave me a much deeper understanding in the importance of taking care of yourself. And as Richard says, you must put your own oxygen mask on first. If you don't, you cannot show up for others on a consistent basis. If it's a short-term something, you probably can. But when it's an 18 months of fighting to survive, literally, for you and your team, you can't. Your body cannot. And our body and mind is it's such an incredible piece of machinery. I mean, is it machinery? We don't really understand all the intricacies of how this magnificent body gets us out of bed, keeps us going every single day. So what are my learnings? My learnings now are, I know that if my back starts to twinge, I know, take the foot off the accelerator, have a bit of downtime, invest in yourself, do a bit of self-nurturing, self-compassion, flow more with what's going on around you rather than trying to push everything. It also shows me or told me that I had a lot of things in place that were very good, and I kept on going to the gym and all these things, but it wasn't enough, particularly for that kind of a situation. But the importance of taking that time to invest in your physical body and your mental health. And that means things like downtime from electronic devices, which at that time we didn't have 24-hour access. We had email, we had a mobile phone, but we didn't have all these apps and things. So it was easier, but now it's not. We're on demand 24 hours a day, if we allow that. Those devices are brilliant, but we should control them, not them control us. Nurturing your body through obviously nutritious foods, nutrient-rich food. So many people think that quickly having some kind of processed food, fast food, is going to feed you. Yes, it will feed you, but it will not nourish you. And more importantly, is it will eventually make you quite sick in one way or another, because our bodies are not made to digest these foods with all these additives, preservatives, colorings, all this other stuff. And we talked briefly about oat milk at the beginning of this call. It's about respecting your body. If you want to get out maximum, you've got to put in maximum in all the dimensions that includes: sleep, movement, hydration, food, me time, breathing, meditation, yoga, tai chi, whatever it is for you, it doesn't matter. But put that on your to-do list every single week for yourself. So really, that's all I wanted to say. And I hope that there's some message and learning in there for you all. And I'm very glad to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you. And thank you to Richard, to Sindre and Yolanda for bringing me here.